you so much. You know, when it comes to purpose-driven, we've talked across the industry about purpose-driven marketing, where investments come from, where they go, where they should be, et cetera. I know this panel is going to be about action because everybody here is very action-oriented, so that's what makes me very excited about it. I would love Rossi, I'm the CMO at Infillion, so aside from being the moderator here, I am extremely passionate about purpose-driven investment and so excited to hear what our panelists have to say today. So if each of you could introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your company and the investment you're making, that would be fantastic.
Hey everybody.
Organization.
Hi, I'm Mary Kim Novak, an CMO, but today I'm actually super excited to present the board that Creative Spirit. And it's all about equal employment for people with intellectual disabilities and making sure that they get fair pay employment with companies that are ready to take that step. So really excited to be here. Laurel and I are on this together. She actually started Creative Spirit, for full disclosure. And so we're happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Rosner. I'm the CMO of Audigent. Audigent's the leading data identity activation and curation platform. We're rewiring all of programmatic. I'm thrilled that we're having this conversation. This came from a discussion with Scott, who I've known for, we decided, 15 or 20 years, and then Laurel, to get the right people together to move purpose-driven marketing forward.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Damian Benders, and I lead the Black Media entity within MyCode Media. MyCode Media is a multicultural marketing and media platform. We are focused on creating opportunities, presentation, creating opportunities for driving increased investment in the multicultural marketing space. I lead our Black business. Very happy to be here.
Thank you.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Scott Kelleher. I'm with Newsbreak. We like to say we are the most important publisher no one has ever heard of. We are a hyper-local news aggregator. Our company's mission is to help solve for local news deserts. So as small publishers and small newspapers across the U.S. in particular have gone out of business, our drive is to figure out how to get local communities the information they need in a quick and easy manner. I'm very excited to participate.
Scott, I'm very excited. It's probably the notification I get most often. I'm very excited about my hyperlocal content.
So I'm not going to lie. The fact that you can know that about us says you're using the platform, and thank you. And yes, we're very good at push.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Schieckhofer. I run digital investment in the U.S. for Group M. I've been working for the past couple years with Gonzalo Del Fa and his team on our Black-owned media efforts, multicultural, also responsible journalism as part of our overall responsible investment framework. Group Black, an important partner of ours as well. So nice to be here.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Carell Cooper, President of Advertising at Group Black. We are a collective and accelerator of Black-owned media. Our mission is to dramatically transform the face of media ownership and investment by supporting and growing the Black media ecosystem.
That's great. I'm going to toss a very general question. Investment. I think we'll
Everyone's got their own twist to it, if you will. I think of it as building long-lasting relationships with your consumers and doing it in a way that is important to the consumer. And importance to the consumer means a number of different things. It could be social, it could be political, it could be whatever that consumer deems is really valuable and important in their life, right? I'll give you a great example. I think the L'Oreal True Match campaign that they did a couple years ago. To me, that's an example of purpose-driven advertising investment where they made it in a way where every woman could see themselves in a L'Oreal, using L'Oreal products, right? That's just one example.
So I would say that our platform of responsible investment, it comes from our legacy of our original work around brand safety and brand suitability. Group M had worked with all our publishers to make sure that they accepted tags by Mo, double verify IES. This was years ago, so that we could see where the ads, to make sure that it was brand suitable inventory. And I think it's about making a decision that you know exactly what you're buying, you know exactly what's being delivered. And our five pillars in terms of responsible investment: brand safety and suitability 1, data ethics 2, DEI is 3rd, responsible journalism 4, and sustainability, right? So very deliberate placement of the client's advertising dollars into the areas, we can dial them up or down. In the U.S., and each region customizes a little differently, but in the U.S., DE&I is extremely important to us, and it has been for the past few years. We also have a Back to News initiative with responsible journalism that is also of particular interest to our clients.
Susan, can I ask you a quick question on that subject? I think in the spirit of being active, right? A lot of that framework, did it take to sort of get the framework together and put it into action? I bet a lot of folks would want to know that.
Yeah, so, it was funny. When we wanted to make it more something that each region could adapt and customize, right? Because it's going to be different in Asia than Europe than the U.S. But once we sat down to do it, the good thing was we had so much to choose from. And it was kind of easy to get to our 5 because we had done all the legwork leading up to that. And then we wanted to put a framework around it so that it reflected the value of the work that we had been doing. So it actually was lots of years to lead up to it, but it made it easy for us to narrow down to our 5.
Thank you for answering that.
So on our side, again at Newsbreak, the one thing about the way we think about it is our company our purpose is for consumers, right? So everybody represents a different arm of this, but the way that we accomplish what we're setting out to do is impacting our actual end game consumers. And so for me and for us, the way we tend to think about it is just as smart investing. There should be no differentiation between the efficacy of your campaigns, the efficacy of your media when you make a smart investment versus not. And that's how we really think about it. It's just be smart about what you're investing. You don't need to sacrifice anything to accomplish other goals on top of your core media KPIs. So our bar is pretty low on this one. It's really just be smart and think about what you're trying to do, and don't just kind of throw your money out there and, hey, look, I can get some cheap stuff, cool, and go from there.
What I really like about this question is that it actually is different, right? What the responses are, and I think that's important. I think brands, companies, everyone involved in the space need to be in the process of figuring out what it means for them and how that works. For MyCode, we came into the space specifically to solve and address need. There were opportunities for Hispanic, Black, AAPI, LGBT organizations, media companies, et cetera, to help them to receive funds, be able to support their businesses, to be able to support their journalism, bring back into the community. And we take that goal to our conversations with brands and agencies. Brand, about what you give back to. For us, the purpose originates with the people that are working in the company, people that are working at the brand, that are trying to develop that conversation. And we want to unearth what that is and give them an opportunity and a partnership to help that come to life. It takes a lot of work, but that's the goal.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely incredible that we were talking before this panel that we thought by the time we got 2 or 3 people deep into this that everyone would be like, yeah, you guys got it, same here, over here, and all. And that is not happened. I think, Susan, what you were saying about creating the structure that allows for fast adoption, I think this conversation here shows that we desperately need to get together as a and create some definitions, because once we have that structure, we can move together, and when we move together, we move much faster. So in the programmatic space, we're curating data inventory to get to deliver better programmatic investment for brand agencies. It's all about driving efficiency. So when we think about what a purpose-driven marketplace is, it's really, and I want to get the words right, so I wrote them down. It's really moving money into organizations that are underrepresented and recognized as underrepresented organizations. And that could be Creative Spirit, that could be Black-owned media, that could be data companies that are LGBTQ-owned. How can we manicure the pathway that the money goes through so we're being purposeful about where it's going? And I think there's a couple of challenges to that, but let's move the money, now that we have the pipes to do it, to the organizations that we want to see have move the money to.
Thank you. Super impressive, since I know you were out late last night.
That's why you write things down before you go out.
is hope.
So, yeah, and I think I agree with everything everybody said. I think for it's driving awareness to drive change. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it's a hard category, and you can't help and you can't do purpose-driven if you're not made in the first. You haven't thought about it. Right? Is a part of this in order to make conscious change in your investment, in your employment practices, in just your day-to-day, the way that you think about any of these different underrepresented or communities in the media. So,
Cool. I think comes time is nomenclature. We're in the communications business. We flip nomenclature all the time. Purpose-driven, minority-owned media. I think there's a lot of nervousness about language in the business, and we're going to make mistakes, and I think that's okay. So I may flip back and forth on language in this topic, and I hope you guys will as well. Over the past 5 to 10 years in directing dollars toward purpose-driven or minority-owned, what progress have we made? And then is there measurement in place? Like, is there a denominator? Do we know? Or is
I think it's. Oh, look, I'm going to call out Group M because I do think that your structure coming in. So as an ad tech platform, as you are as well, you have forced like a group kind of coming in and saying, we almost won't work with you, right? You need to prove yourself as a certain entity to work with us in order for us to then move forward. Is the largest part of the investment that? Maybe not, but you are making those. I call you guys on this and everybody who is doing that on the stage, because I think that's a very, very honest way of saying how you're seeing major change.
The part of being a can when you can actually talk about something new. The last year and a half have opened up doors to move investment companies in ways that are so much easier and help break through the obstacles. So in the last year and a half, in part because the cookie is going away, forced us to rethink how programmatic worked and how the dollars were flowing and how all the companies in the digital supply chain are working. We can now choose exactly which companies and which are included in how the dollar gets spent. So if Group M says we want these kinds of companies in a marketplace, that can get fired up now, and that's something that just happened with the advent of curation and programmatic. So I think up until then, one of the biggest obstacles was the difference between wanting to see those dollars move there and being able to actually execute it at scale.
I was just going to add that we just think it's essential that we start and continue and start to monitor the flow of the dollars in a more aggressive way. I don't believe there's a real universal approach yet. So that just sort of simply answer your question, but each of our companies are doing our own part to try to do that piece. There are thousands the campaign and the site, whether or not the dollar owned, whether it went to minority targeted, whether it went to female owned, whether it went to LGBT, and that reinforcement, right, of where the dollar is flowing is really going to be incredibly important as the industry and the intention actually evolves.
fantastic?
So I'll pile on just a little bit, so slightly contrarian. I agree. We can measure now, which is a good thing. Like, that's the first step, is to be able to actually track what's going on. But I feel like we're only in early days in figuring out how to prove the efficacy of the media and the purpose. And I'll say, as a relatively unknown company walking around Cannes for the last several days, when I tell people our company's mission, there is not a person who doesn't go, oh, that's cool, that's different. But and we were talking about this before, getting that conversation to translate from, yeah, to, okay, I'm putting money here. I'm intentionally making the choice to backstop my words with my money, and I would say we're still terrible as an industry about that. Like, the concept is well seen. The ideas are, I would say now, firmly implanted and germinating, but still so early. It's like, ay.
So I would focus on two different areas. One is Black-owned media. And when you talk about measurement, right? So we did look in terms of what's our spend versus total versus the industry, right? Like you can use SMI to look at ours versus the industry. While ours was better than the industry at large, it still was really small. It's a couple years later, I would say we've had really good improvement, but yet not enough, right? So, and I'm sure you would agree with that.
I'm just going to say I agree with Susan.
We need, to your point, there has to be passion from the industry at large, from all of our clients. I will say with regard to news, when you look at where news used to be, where it used to be anywhere from like 16 to 20% of overall budgets 20 years ago, it is dramatically down. The political environment didn't help. People didn't want to be around lots of news about politics. There's been, just lots of issues that clients just want to stay away from. We fought really hard, whether it was talking about, okay, you don't have to be on, the hard news page or the political page, but support sports, support entertainment. So it's gotten somewhat better, but we have a long way to go.
And our tech partners have to help because it's got to be nuanced, right?
Absolutely.
So that, this I saw a panel on the Group M rooftop yesterday, and one of the panelists made a great point, which was, hey, I don't want to be around anything having to do with COVID. Well, that's a terrible idea because as a parent, how are you supposed to learn how to protect your kids? And it's a nuanced conversation. And as a relatively small player here, to challenge some of our tech partners and say, hey, you guys got to make the brand safety tech get better so it understands the nuance and understands how to make those conversations matter.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything that Scott and Susan are saying. We've seen some progress. It's not enough. It hasn't accelerated fast enough. And I do think while it's good to have that intention, right, there needs to be more action. And I think the action is on, the brand side in terms of specifically moving dollars or making sure that they're placing dollars, right, to diverse-owned media, Black-owned media, but also the tech piece of it is super important. I mean, we have spent the last year trying to educate the market around brand safety as it relates to Black-owned media, and not only Black-owned media from an entertainment perspective, but even from a news perspective, right? There's no reason why in today's day and age that an entire URL, because it's deemed news, should be on a block list. It doesn't make any sense.
Scott, I think I agree with you, but I think you didn't push it far enough, because if we just move the money and we aren't thinking about it in the same way of measuring the impact and showing that when you spend with purpose, you actually drive better results and you have closed-loop attribution, then what this is a great year, one award at Cannes, and then all of it goes away. So there's a lot of research that shows when you invest into specific groups and new ideas and you unlock new ways to use spend, you're going to create more value and overachieve on the KPI. So I think if we just talk about getting the money there without thinking at the same time and we wait to have the measurement conversation, then we've really taken all of the effort that we're going to put in and we have not done it a good service. And for the long term, we've got to bring in that closed loop attribution. And this is not a negative because I think we have the tech in place to do that. We just have to be purposeful about making sure that we remember why the dollar was being spent ultimately in the first place from the brand.
Because at the end of the day, right, the media has to perform, right? You can get the investment once, but if the media doesn't perform, it's not going to come back, right?
It has to outperform.
It has to.
Unfortunately,
it does,
right?
Right? Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, again, over the last year, at Group Black, and you know this, I mean, we've spent the last year building out, our measurement strategy, making sure that we have the right tools in place, whether it's brand lift or foot traffic or whatever the advertiser wants to measure, that we have that in place for them, because again, we know that while 2 years ago the investments were made because it was the right thing to do, we need to shift the conversation from it's the right thing to do to there's a huge opportunity there for marketers and our media has to outperform.
Carell, let me stay on you for a second. Susan made me think about the role, obviously, that play. And so Group Black's entire purpose is to power spend in Black-owned media companies, and you were just named to Fastco's most innovative companies in media for it. How has your scope grown with brands and agencies since you were founded around 2 years ago? With emphasis on the brand part, because I'd like to hear a little bit about how you're engaging with the brands.
Yeah, again, we're only 2 years old as a company, right? And we've spent that time really educating brands and agencies about how to spend with Black-owned media, right? I think the brand safety conversation is just one piece of it, right? And making sure that the marketplace understands the depth and breadth of our audience, right? Because you go back to a couple years ago, I think there was this perception that Black-owned only means Black-targeted as well too, and that is not the case at all, right? Black-owned, our content is really for anyone, any diverse audience, depending on what it is. And so we've had to educate the marketplace that while yes, we will take the dollars and the RFPs for reaching African American audience, but you can spend more with us than just one segment.
Thank you. Mary Kim, just a quick question. Have we made the same kind of progress, I'll call it progress for sure, in the disability space?
No, I mean, I think it's a challenge. I think it's even like a secondary challenge because you almost there's just as, disability crosses every race and every other. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have is that as everybody is really trying to tackle as big of an issue when it comes to whether it's the Black-owned or it's almost becomes a second conversation where we want it to be the top conversation, involved in it should just be at that equal level of talking about it. Are we also considering the people that have disabilities as well, right? I mean, and it's hard because we're fully in the conversation, right? And I think we've made some really great steps where I think we've had real great opportunity is when you see a company double down. When you see a company like Voya or you see a company like, Verizon who really sits there and says, we are fully committed to this, and we will bring in the employment and we will give you the case study and that we will give you that testimonial to bring it top of mind, but it's the hurdle that everybody else is having, right? It's a little bit of like the owned versus the audience, which I love because I think that's such an important differentiation and it's the same thing here, right? It's that level of education that truly still needs to happen. We need to get in there. We need to educate, and we need to educate in order to make it more top of mind.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Dave, I have a question for you. You
Shoot.
obviously are talking a lot about, I think you said double down, but you're doubling down on purpose-driven. How is this going to change your business? How does it make it better?
We're thinking about this exact approach across a number of different areas. So we can do this in the pharma category where we can create private marketplaces that are specific for conditions. And so the ability to curate data and inventory works across. But here we are in an area that is, I would say, massively underspent against, which from my days at the agency meant that there was a huge opportunity because this is really uncharted. It's uncharted when you're talking about neurodiversity. It's uncharted when you're talking about companies that are recognized for purpose. This will allow us to help clients win by tapping into those audiences and those companies in ways they couldn't before, and then providing the talk point that we bring back to Cannes that shows how much more powerful that purpose-driven spend is.
Thank you.
And how loyal loyalty
People
I think
see it.
becomes so interesting. I think that's probably the most interesting part for me is that level of when you talk about the consumer and going after the consumer and why did they buy that product or why did they want to work with that brand. And then it goes back to the purpose-driven part of it of because I know they're doing this. I know that their hiring practices are for, for whatever level we're talking about, for the disability. That changes everything. I mean, that's why we do it every day, right? I mean, that's when it's a good day to be in this business kind of thing.
I'm so glad you said that because I had a debate with Shelley from the Female Quotient about this. Is it okay to just move the money show that it works. She's like, no, you have to be visible. And I don't think we resolved it yesterday, but you have, because when you're visible in the industry, you inspire people and you take them with you. So if we just get it right inside of a quarterly meeting with the brand,
Right.
we're not going to pull things forward as quickly as we want. But we have the ability to inspire with this work, and so we have to do the work, and we have to make sure we do it in a way that's very visible.
No, and I'm really good friends with Shelley, so I'm glad to know that I've moved this needle forward for her. But I think that I challenge everybody in this room and on who's listening to this today is if you have never hired someone with an intellectual disability, please do, because it will absolutely change your perception of what that means from that hire, but also what they bring to the table. And that's true of any underrepresented community. The only way we get the greatest ideas is with the greatest level of creativity, and that creativity only comes by having a diverse amount of thinking and experiences at the table, and that doesn't change. That's experience every single day, and especially when it comes to someone who you just honestly just have a preconceived notion of that's a disabled person, and then you realize, like, I'm the most uneducated person until I actually rectify that thinking. And so it's couldn't be more fulfilling to do it, but it's also what they absolutely deserve. So
I just wanted to quickly echo the point about the awareness of the work being done, as well as the effectiveness of the marketing around it. We've done some really important studies about the power of values-driven marketing with these audiences. Purpose-driven, values-driven, the terminology switches pretty
It's
often.
okay here.
It's
We're gonna
okay in
keep
this
switching
space.
We're working through that.
But there's an important thing that's happening, and I think that as marketers and as people trying to make an impact here, you have to really acknowledge it and understand the power of it. It's not just the folks that you're trying to reach or that you're being inclusive with that are an opportunity for your brand to express their values to. It's the people around them, it's the people that they care about, and folks in general who just want a world that is a bit more inclusive and a bit more respectful. And that is power in opening up opportunities for your brand, as well as the loyalty that you were talking about. Everybody's going to come down to the price and does it have a new feature, or what's the widget do? But there's something that transcends that, and I think that's the power in this purpose-driven work, is that you really can make someone a lifelong customer merely by being smart about your intention and your choices.
I asked the question about investment from some of the relatively larger organizations. Scott, why did you guys double down on purpose-driven, just in your smaller environment?
Yeah. So to be clear, our smaller environment is actually not small. So we have
For sure.
14 million daily users in our little ecosystem. But it was an area that has been, and candidly, so our founder is a PhD in machine learning, and how to handle local has been a challenge for our industry for ages, right? The old adage of like, well, you can't buy local nationally, right? That doesn't work. Well, we actually sat back and we're like, maybe we can. So that's from an ads perspective. It was like, I think we can do this. But to your point, the other piece about what we're doing, which we haven't talked about at all, honestly, I've barely talked about it since I've been here this week. So mission number one for us is to make sure that people in a community get the information that they need in a timely manner, right? How big or how small your community is, that should happen. But the other side of what we're doing is, if you used to be a journalist at one of these smaller newspapers or whatever the outlet might be that is now closed, and you want to continue reporting on your community, we wanted to build a platform to allow people to do that. So now we have a creators network. These people can come into our platform. We have about 1,500 of these journalists who are writing directly into our platform now, and we share back revenue to them to help them continue doing what they love to do. So that's kind of the second piece, and I think that's what really kind of tipped it for us. It was like, wait, we can help the community, we can help the people in the community, and from an advertising and marketing perspective, we can actually do this at scale. That was really all right, we got this.
I think the entire industry has an infrastructure of some kind of value exchange, right? What are we going to give the consumer for their time, attention, and their information? And I love the way you articulated that. I think that helps me along in a huge way.
And keep clicking on those pushes too. Thanks.
Awesome. Will do. Let's talk about programmatic buying for a second. Anecdotally, some have said that the shift to programmatic can make it difficult for a smaller publisher to gain visibility with brands that can meaningfully support its content. Would you agree with this? And I'd just like to hear each of you or some of you expand on that. Why don't we start with you, Dave?
All right. Actually, that idea came from a conversation with Group Black that inspired us at Audigent. Yeah, it's happening all the time. The pubs that you want in your buy are getting opted out in the algorithms from some of the giant programmatic infrastructure partners. There's 100% a way to fix that through curation where we can create PMPs. We use the word PMP, private marketplace, a little differently at Audigent, where we put in thousands of pubs and we can control the entire environment. We activate it on the supply side, adding in data so we can see what's working and optimize it through data live. So you can create a protected environment where you make sure that invisible algorithms are not removing the thing that you really wanted in the buy. I think this whole thing, to echo where I started, because I only came in with one thing to say, the whole thing is only about a year and a half old. That we have the technology to put together something that scales, that allows us to be focused and inclusive of the publishers and even the data suppliers that we want.
That's great.
Thanks for the shout out on the conversation. Appreciate that. I agree with what you're saying about the curation piece. I also, again, still think that while we do that, we have to solve for the keyword blocking. We have to solve for the site level domain blocking, because it doesn't matter whether you're big or small. If you're in that curation and there's still, brand safety applied, right? It's still not gonna work. We recently did a very small test with Double Verify, where we took 10 of our clients that were running across Group Black sites and worked with Double Verify and a client and changed the blocking from the domain level to the page level, and it opened up 15% more inventory for that marketer to take advantage of, while still sticking to what they deemed as sort of brand safe, if you will. So there are ways to do this and activate on it, but I think we have to, again, get to the root of the issue, and I think brand safety and blocking at the keyword level, site page level is still a big issue.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And while we were deciding to focus very much on our DEI initiative, so this was a couple of years ago, we did an audit of all of our accounts and the exclusion keyword list. And what happens is that, as let's say it's a small, very happy campaign, you might have a ton of news keywords or underrepresented voices keywords that were blocked for one campaign, but then it becomes part of right, an overall client list. We actually went through like every single word and then started removing words on the exclusion list to do the same exact thing. But it's something that all teams at the agencies or the clients need to do, like I would say all the time, right? Not just once a year or every couple of years.
This is when we need to catch up with technology. Like technology can do it. Like we should start as a company, as an industry, starting to go to the most innovative way of doing it and have everybody catch up versus, so it's like the fact that you're talking domain level versus page level. Like
right.
if you can do it at page level, then respectfully, let's all do it at page level. And if
right.
you can't do it at page level, then don't work the person who can't do it. It's the same thing. And I do think we need to put, this is the one technology my entire life. This is the one time where actually, we actually have to allow the technology to allow us to, we're a digital media. We're supposed to be the most targeted industry, and we keep ourselves from it because we try to go with the highest level common denominator versus actually allowing the innovation to allow these nuances that truly make a difference to messaging the right audience at that right time, at the right place, with the right message, and we don't allow ourselves, we almost hold ourselves back.
That's absolutely right. I think one of the dangers that we have in being in digital and programmatic is that we think the system is automatically going to be smart, and it comes down to the fundamentals of brand building that were here long before the internet. We've got to be thoughtful. You can't just let something that's not thinking do it. If you're launching 100%. A brand campaign, you have to look at the specifics of that brand and go in and change it, and that requires, all respect to ChatGPT, that requires hires a person who really is passionate and knows that brand.
100%.
Now,
Again,
and you can't
machines
just
aren't
say,
gonna take over.
because look, I mean, I think that's such an interesting example. You end up with these legacy decisions that were really smart, and then you end up blocking everything you wanted. Like, why isn't my campaign scaling? So I think that's such a great example of some of the challenges. But sometimes, and we're like, it's programmatic. I think if we're thoughtful about the, we can't assume because we're digital, the algorithms and GPT is going to make it.
Yeah, I
100%.
agree. Like programmatic activation needs just as much scrutiny, if not more, than if we're giving the business on an IO basis. 100%.
And push your partners. They've got
Yeah.
people to do it, right? Like that's the funny thing when I'm 2 years now deep into programmatic, and the thing that I thought was shocking was how many people are involved with fine-tuning the campaign. So in some ways, that strategy work that existed inside of digital teams, now there's a lot of people in the chain. So I think if there's resource to push when the buy side when the buy side sets up.
So last quick point on this one is, even when it's working like it's supposed to, sometimes people don't believe it. Right? So the number of times like you'll be buying something on the open exchange, and I look and I'm like, oh, hey, look, this brand has bought a whole bunch of stuff from us, and I'll call them up and be like, hey, you guys are buying a whole bunch of stuff from us. Like, what's driving that? Like, where's this coming from? And they're, oh, no, we don't buy you guys. We don't buy news. I'm like, well,
Forget a call.
you know what? I'll tell you what. I'll let that go because the obvious math is not going to work for you. So we'll just go with that.
It's working for you right
Yeah.
now. I love the idea that this group might still be here tonight talking about this, and maybe we'll follow up after. Love the action piece. A quick one for Susan, and then we'll do a wrap-up. Does this work for smaller agencies, clearly holding company-level organizations? Does this topic resonate, and for smaller brands?
Yes, it does. It does. It's really on a brand basis. I don't think we can say all big brands care and all small brands don't. It's really, first of all, I think they all care. But it's a question of how much are they willing to give a commitment into the underrepresented spaces.
So much. Well, I'd like to say that we come to Cannes for incredible thought leadership, and we leave here with a responsibility for good accountability for the topics we discussed. So thank you for being here and doing this. One action when we leave here. Carell.
Making the investment is great, but make sure you're measuring the impact and improving on top of that.
Great. Susan.
I'm going to have all the teams do another keyword audit.
Perfect. Scott.
For us, it's really about make sure people know what we're doing so that they can make a conscious decision with their money, right? Push everyone to always make that two-piece decision. Be conscious about what you're doing and make sure you recognize the performance when it happens.
Damien.
I'm going to borrow a couple of ones that have been said so far. I think the measuring the attribution is incredibly important, and what we also need to do is redefine a little bit what measurement is. Not all the same metrics that have been working for the past 20 years are the only metrics that should be applied to analyzing impact, analyzing the power of these communities when you reach them. And your investment has to actually extend beyond a test. These communities are not to be tested with. These communities are folks that absolutely are your customer on a long-term basis and should be given that commitment over a long period of time, just like you do for all marketing 101 you do against everybody else.
Thank you. Dave.
Well, first off, that was fantastic. So I'm going to build on that because you've said so much. Let's come back and prove it. You're 100% right. The conversation is what happens over the long term, because there's so much great research that shows what happens when you connect with communities over the long term. But let's come back. Let's take the next 6 months and prove that the dollar works harder, and then let's make a lot of noise about it. And I think that could be any one of the communities that we're talking about. It could be, I'd be very excited to work with Creative Spirit and show that companies that are leading to diversity for employment can be recognized and they can out-deliver supply paths. So let's find our moment, and let's show that it not only delivers, it out-delivers.
Thank you. Mary Kim.
Yeah, I think it goes, let's make this conversation part of Marketing 101. I don't think this is a conversation you should be having later. Let's bring it into this generation, the single person, so that like in 5 years and in 10 years, this is part of their DNA. Because we're re-educating ourselves on how to do this. This shouldn't even be a conversation. I mean, this is a media plan that should be done. The dollars should be put into it, as you said. And from the neurodiversity level of it is, I just challenge everybody out there that you don't have a conversation. If you don't know this conversation, reach out to us. It's Creative Spirit. We will come. We will do the heavy lifting to make sure that you guys are part of this conversation. It's such a conversation to have, and we will be part of proving that as well.
Thank you. All right, your hard work is not done. Questions from the audience?
About the monsoon that's coming.
They said it was gonna.
Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
for responding.
Thank you.